Hi, this is Ryan from Cannabis, and I've been trying to do this blog, but it's a sensitive topic. It's about my little brother, and I apologize in advance. The video quality, the sound quality is bad. It's kind of choppy. It's not very clear. I apologize. My camera got messed up in Utah when I was protesting, and now I've got to have some kind of replacement. Until I get that, I've got this crappy video feed and audio feed, and that's what we got to work with. But we got back from camping. My girls had a blast. We went to the lake and got all stung from mosquitoes and everything else, but had a good time. Seen an eagle's nest with 2 baby eagles in it. It was just a beautiful sight. Just a nice trip. My wife cooked us great meals for the night that we just stayed overnight. It was fun though. But when I got back, I was all sooty from the fire and stinky and everything, and I went and took my shower and opened up my closet to get dressed when I was done, and found that my wife had washed this shirt, which is a shirt that belonged to my brother, and I don't know if you can see it. It says Choke Smoke Hawaiian Homegrown, and it's got this on the back as well. He died back in 2002, but back then he was probably as much of a weed connoisseur as I was when I was 16. I'd been long gone for a long time. I gave my life to Jesus, gave up, smoking weed, smoking cigarettes, drinking beer. I was totally die-hard for, religion at that time. I was looking for a structure. Religion, whether it's the Mormons, whether it's the Baptist, whether it's, whatever, they just disappointed me. I had unrealistic expectations, probably, that the church would be more beneficial than it was, and more I found it was just more bureaucracy. But in that time, I had given up a lot of things. My little brother was just getting into them, and it's just about the same time I was giving them all up, and I had given them up for years by then. And he came to me. I was at the house once, and I was just in and out like usual. And he stopped me before I left, and he says, "Hey, do you want to roll this up, man?" And he gave me a cellophane with some in it. And I'd smoked with him once before, and he thought I was going to be cool with it. And I took it, and I was cool. I didn't get upset. I didn't have any reason to be. I just took it and I thought about it, and came back a couple of days later and gave it back to him. And I said, "Dude, I'm sorry, I can't." And that was in 2001. A couple months later is when he would die. And I'll show you a picture of him. I was proud of him. He was my best friend. Probably had no better friend in the world at the time than him. I mean, he traveled with me everywhere. He went to Christian music festivals halfway across the state. Went to Washington with me from Utah. Took a bunch of road trips and just had a lot of fun. And even though I was a Christian and he was, a metalhead and, played awesome guitar, just a cool kid, and we disagreed on a lot of things, especially with religion and, or lack of. He was more agnostic, and he was honest about it. He didn't know. He wasn't sure one way or the other. He just didn't have any evidence. And he was a thoughtful kid, and I appreciated him. And anyway, I got this out of the closet tonight, put it on. I've just been thinking about Justin, and and turning him down on cannabis, it kind of haunts me in a way, because what he died from was prescription medications that was, helping him treat depression and whatnot. He ended up overdosing on the medications that he was taking for depression, which some of these medications, like Zoloft and some of the other ones, will say, may increase risk of suicide, may increase risk of depression. And there's a whole long list. You'll see a guy and a girl running along the beach and happy, and the whole list of side effects are running across the screen, and it's like 2 minutes long. May kill you. If it doesn't kill you, it'll maim you. If it doesn't maim you, it'll give you anal bleeding. If it doesn't give you anal bleeding, maybe spontaneous human combustion. I mean, there's this whole list of stuff. And, there's a girl, I seen her on YouTube. She testified before Congress. She's an RN and a PhD, and she testified that it helps. Marijuana helps treat ADHD, which is what I was treated for when I was a kid, and which was what made me depressed. I mean, I was a mess. They'd given me Ritalin, they'd given me Tegretol, they'd given me Zoloft, they'd given me all these things. And, one would have a bad reaction, I would be a whole different person. And so they'd give me another one, and then I'd be all suicidal and want to die. And then they'd give me another one. I might be happy for a couple of weeks, but then I'd find myself becoming dependent on them and needing more. And and it was just a bad cycle. And 2 times I seriously attempted to kill myself, and I almost succeeded once. Having seizures, I'd overdosed on Wellbutrin. I was totally, choking on my own tongue, and the cops came and revived me, and it was a mess. And it was due to these prescription drugs. I mean, these heavy synthetic medications that have a risk of death. And I just think of, if I was treated with cannabis more, and I loved cannabis back then, it was just really hard to find. It was in Utah. The only thing you could find is brick bud, which gives you a headache, and I was trying to relieve a headache. And, it was just not good. It was a hard situation, and, just finding cannabis was untypical unless, we were in a lot of luck. And, we could drive to Salt Lake and always find it, but who wants to drive 75 miles, to go pick up a sack? And I don't know, it was just hard. I just think that he would have lived longer had he been treated with cannabis like they're doing with people in California right now for the same symptoms. Teenagers go through stuff like that all the time. I mean, that's a teenage symptom: being depressed, feeling alone, being bored, whatever. That's a teenage thing. But to treat it with such heavy medication and to go overboard like that, and to eventually, have this kid die, it's painful. And living in Utah was hard. I mean, right before he died, just a couple months before he died, he had the police show up on 4 of his friends' doorsteps asking for him. And they knew where he lived. I mean, if they didn't, after giving him a ride home from a drunken party once, he was at one of these teenage parties, if they didn't know where the kid lived, or who he was, then they're really slow, because there's not very many cops. This is a very small town. If they didn't have any record of that, if they couldn't just pull up and say, oh yeah, such and such lives at such and such address, I mean, come on now. They do that all the time. And no, man, they, instead of, going right to the source and talking to whatever they needed to talk to him about directly, they go to his friends' houses, which tarnishes his name, makes his friends' parents scared that their kids are getting into something that's illegal, and that the cops are in on it, and they're the big scare or whatever. Well, that's what happened. So he lost a lot of friends. 3 or 4 months later, it might have even been less, he was dead. He killed himself, due to the harassment from the police, which we called the police, and they said, no, it wasn't our department, it was Springville. Eventually they said it was Springville. We were in Mapleton at the time, which is 1 town away, and they didn't know at first. And my parents called and said, hey, what are you guys asking for my son for? What did he do wrong? And they didn't know. They said, well, we'll get back to you. Eventually, a couple days later, they said, well, we don't know what it was about, but we can tell you who it was. And it was a sergeant in Springville. And we tried to get a hold of him. The guy never called us back. And we don't know why they were harassing him. We don't know why he went to these kids' houses. There's no explanation for it whatsoever. So, I think it's just living in Utah. It's just a tough place to live. And cannabis makes life a little better. And I don't see why they're so against happiness or joy. Even the Bible talks about joy. It talks about intoxicating joy. If you read Deuteronomy 14:26, it talks about being intoxicated with strong drink and wine. What is strong drink for? It's not for medicine. Strong drink is, typically for getting drunk. So anyway, Deuteronomy 14:26. I just think the whole morality issue in Utah is bizarre. Their prophet drank while he was in jail to get drunk. It wasn't a sacrament. John Taylor testified it was to get drunk. These were both prophets of the LDS Church. And John Taylor's testimony was they had weakened spirits. They were feeling down, and they used the alcohol to lift them up, and that it was not a sacrament. So for them to be so against joy like they are, it's not even within the confines of their religion. Their religion's pretty strict, but Joseph Smith, John Taylor, Brigham Young, all enjoyed drinks, all enjoyed, altered state of mind. Joseph Smith even smoked tobacco in Carthage jail. You can look that up. Anyway, I'm out of time here, but it goes out to my little brother. Love you, Justin.